Hi friends! Welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. Today's video, I am so pleased, even though it's like 2 months late, to finally be here to talk about my best books of 2022. Yes! I'm so excited. I have been waiting to make this video because the Harper Collins Union had been on strike since late November. Now, I'd never thought the strike would go on so long, but because a reasonably high percentage, like, not all of them, but, like, a decent number of the books on this list were HarperCollins titles. I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna wait till the strike is over." So here we are, February 19th. The strike is finally over, and I can talk to you about my favorite books that I read for the year, which is very exciting. So here's what we're gonna do. Of course, because you know me, I have slides for you, I have stats for you. It's gonna be a good time. We can talk about all of the great books. I have honorable mentions because of course I do. And yeah, it's gonna be fun. So I will, as per usual, kind of do my usual thing where I'll like sort of say a thing or talk about a section or a slide, and then talk a little bit to whoever's in the comments, and then move forward so that people watching this on replay who don't want to hear all the chit chat in the comments can like kind of skip ahead if they want to. Up to you. Or maybe you like the chit chat. Anyway, hello. I see a few of you here. Hi, small channel. Hi, Renee. Yes, finally, it is time. I have been like waiting desperately to be able to actually like put this out in the world. Hi, Heather. Because I read so many amazing books last year, and I know you got some of my sort of genre picks, but I was like, okay, we're just gonna wait. And then, like, thank God they finally have a fair bargain. The strike is over. I can now tell you all the things. Hi, Megan. So I have a slideshow for you. Enjoy. I'm glad that so many other people enjoy my slides because they're fun. Um, and I do, of course, as I said, have stats for you to talk about my favorite books because, of course, I do. Give me a chance to have stats. I'll give you stats. Hi, Cool Gamer. Hi, Joey. Hey, Beth. Glad people are looking forward to it. Okay, so let's begin with some statistics. In overview, as a reminder, in total, I read 395 books in 2022. Yes, I know it's a lot. I do read a lot, but I have videos talking about why and how I read as much as I do. So I'm not going to go into that right now. But like, you are a reader regardless of how much you do or don't read. So it's what I like to do, and it's what I do full time. Read books and make content about it. So, in 2022, of those 395 books that I read, 24 of them are what I call six-star reads, which is what I give to a favorite of the year, which works out to about 6% of the books, which actually is lower than it's even been in previous years. So I'm not mad about that. I'm also including 9 honorable mentions that were like very close, but didn't quite make it over to the six-star read level. That works out to about 2% of the books that I've read. So in totality, the books I'm talking about here make up 8% of the books that I read in the year. Give you all the stats and slideshows. I have it. I will do so. All right. So heads up for these stats, all of these stats are looking at a combination of my favorites of the year and honorable mentions. So I just kind of combined it for taking a look at this. Unsurprisingly, my favorite genres to read are pretty well represented here. My most represented genre is fantasy at 27.3%, closely followed by science fiction at 24.2%. And if you add together my 3 categories of romance from this chart, it makes up about 15%. We've also got some nonfiction, like surprising amount of nonfiction compared to how much I actually read. I think I do a pretty good job of picking it. Some contemporaries, one mystery. We've got kind of a variety of things, a bit of horror. Nothing too surprising other than the fact that I think while I don't read a ton of nonfiction, the nonfiction I do pick up has probably a higher likelihood to make it onto my favorites list. In terms of target age demographics, it is predominantly adult titles. So about 85% of the books on this list are for adults, 12% are YA, and 3% is middle grade. I think I have one middle grade that made it onto this list. So, also not surprising, the majority of what I read is for adults. And so that kind of tracks. In terms of format, I thought this was kind of interesting. About half of my favorite books I listen to as audio. And, about half of my reading, actually, this last year, about 60% of my reading was via audio. So again, this kind of makes some sense. 33% is an uncorrected proof. That can be either physical or digital. So I do have a decent number of books that I'm reading for review that I seem to be loving. And in terms of publishers, the most represented publisher, I am not surprised, is Macmillan at 27.3%. This is probably because Tor and Tor.com are imprints under Macmillan, and I read a lot from them. They are among my favorites. And so that's pretty heavy here. I was surprised at how big indie was actually. 15% of these books are indie published titles. And I mentioned I'd been waiting for the Harper Collins strike to be over because, as you can see, fully 21% of the books on my favorites list are Harper Collins titles, and that's why I wanted to wait till the strike was over to share this. So, yeah, I do think it's kind of interesting. Penguin Random House is 12%, and while they publish the most titles, they are not the most represented in kind of my favorites list here. So I find that interesting. I wonder if great audio can elevate a really good book to a favorite. Yeah, I do think that a great audiobook can elevate it. I also think a bad audiobook can detract from it. If I'm really struggling with an audiobook, I might just switch to a physical book. There are times that the audio just for whatever reason isn't working for me. But yeah, I do think that a great audio performance can definitely have potentially have that effect. New to me. So this is looking at whether I had read these authors previously. And this is interesting. Actually, like 54.5% of the books that were favorites were from authors I had read before, but 45.5 were from new authors that I had not read from before. So there's definitely pretty equal opportunity for new authors and existing favorites to have books that I love enough to make it onto this list. Were they for review? Yeah, a lot of them were. 51.5 of the books, about half of the books on this list are books that I had for review. And, I think part of that is that I try to be a little more particular about the books that I request for a review or accept for a review. And so because of that, my likelihood of loving them is hopefully higher. Plus, a lot, honestly, too, you saw how overrepresented Macmillan is here. Tor sends me a lot of stuff, and I'm not mad about it because I would probably go out and buy a lot of their books anyway, and you're going to see a decent number of Tor titles on this list. Looking at publication year, this is kind of interesting. So 6%. I had two 2023 releases, so two books that I read early that I loved enough to put on this list. So you'll see that. The biggest category was 2022 releases, about 50% of these books were published in 2022. Again, that kind of tracks with how many of these were for review. And then you see kind of the ones that are backlist titles. It's like that's pretty decently represented as well. The earliest published work on this list is 1935. And, we've got four from the 1900s, 10 published between 2000 and 2021. So, kind of a mix. It's like heavily frontlist, but we definitely have some older things as well. And then looking at author identity, because I always do this, I try to prioritize reading from marginalized authors. And, that shows in my stats at the end of the year, but I'm also curious, okay, how does that show up in which books I'm loving the most? Like not only what I'm reading, but is that tracking into the books that are my favorite? And I think the answer is yes, it is. So like 48%, almost half of my favorite books this year were by queer authors, openly queer authors. Which makes sense. I've been reading a lot of them this year and loving a lot of them. That tracks for me. Looking at author race and ethnicity, we've got like a pretty solid, like almost half of them were Black, Indigenous, and person of color authors of my favorites. Um, I do separate out white Jewish authors, because I think the ethnicity piece there for representation matters. That's that like green 6%, but just like plain white is like 45.5%. So yeah, like about half, almost half are Black, Indigenous, and person of color authors, because that's about what I try to read, and like it is tracking also into favorites. Looking at gender, this is interesting to me actually. I think men are, compared to how many male authors I read, they're a little overrepresented in my favorites. Because I think I I wanna say I read like 70 something percent female authors, but only like 57, 58% female authors were in my favorites. Male is like 30%, but then my NB authors are overrepresented, like 12% in my favorites. So I find that makeup really kinda interesting. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. Hello. Alright. With that said, let's go ahead and get into the books. Those are my stats. I always like looking at stats. It's fun. So we're gonna look at some honorable mentions. I have 9 of them, and then we're gonna count down my 24 favorite books that I read in 2022. And one note is I do have them in order. I don't have the honorable mentions in order. I do have the 24 favorites in order, but it's kind of random. It's sort of like they're generally in the right spot, but like on another day they could get moved around a little bit. I mean, I think you'll generally see the ones towards the bottom, towards the middle, towards the top are like in the right general areas, but it's, you know, I loved all of them, so like how much does it matter? This is mostly for the purposes of the video. Okay, honorable mentions. Slide 1 of 3. So, I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. This was all over the place, and I listened to the audiobook because Libro FM offered it for free and everybody was talking about it, and I was like, "Yeah, okay, what the hell?" And it was fantastic. I was a little too old for iCarly, so I didn't really know anything about Jeanette McCurdy. I just picked it up because the title is striking and people were talking about it. There was a lot of buzz, and I think it is excellent. And, like a really good portrait of growing up as a child actor in Hollywood with a narcissistic, abusive parent. And I mean, that's a lot of what it's about and kind of what she went through with eating disorders and addiction and recovery. And yeah, it was great. I think this is one that deserved to win. It won Goodreads Choice Award for nonfiction, and I'm not surprised. Thought it was very good. Pretty Dead Queens by Alexa Dunn. Heads up, like I am friends with Alexa Dunn, so that's like my disclaimer there. But I think this is the best thing that she's written to date. I really enjoyed this. It was a fun small town YA murder mystery that had some twists at the end that had me like screaming and DMing her because I was like, "What did you do?" I really enjoyed this. So if you like a good murder mystery with some good twists and juicy drama, it's a good one. It was a lot of fun. A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall. This deserves all the love. It was beautiful. This is a super slow burn historical romance that's like childhood friends to lovers with a trans woman lead. And I just like, oh my God, this book was beautiful. It was so good. I want to see more people reading it and loving it because it's fantastic. Um, all right. Next slide of honorable mentions. The Sunbearer Trials by Aidan Thomas. Again, I it's been really fun because I've read everything Aidan Thomas has put out, and I think his writing just keeps improving. And the Sunbearer Trials was a fantastic YA fantasy, really directed at teens, and it is the perfect blend of fun, action-packed, great cast of characters, good representation, interesting world building, like drama, family stuff. Like it's got everything, and I think it's really good. I think I while I enjoyed Aiden Thomas's debut, I thought there were things that were really great about it. I thought there were places in terms of the writing craft that could have been improved a little bit. And I think we've seen his craft really continue to improve. And I thought this was fantastic, like a really, really good YA fantasy book. Um, Leech by Hiron Ennis. This was really, really great. So Tamsin Muir here calls it a wonderful new entry to Gothic science fiction. Think Wuthering Heights with worms, which, yes, but it's also like a futuristic sort of dystopian Gothic sci-fi. And this does an amazing job writing from the perspective of a hive mind, which is weird. It's definitely horror. It's like sci-fi Gothic horror. I loved it. Like, I didn't see a lot of people talking about it, but I thought this was very, very good and weird and went some interesting places. So I loved that. Also, Nine Fox Gambit by Yoon Ha Lee. This was amazing. I actually read this one for a video where I was reading things that I had picked up because of Angela at Literature Science Alliance. And she loves Nine Fox Gambit, and I finally picked it up because of her in that video, and I loved it too. I thought it was just so good and interesting and really, really smart, but it kind of throws you in the deep end, and you just have to kind of go with it and trust that you and Holly will get you there. But a lot of interesting sort of space politics and I don't know. It's a hard one, honestly, to describe, but I really enjoyed the ride, and I look forward to reading more in the series. The Sunbearer Trials is a lot. Yeah, I mean, it is. Like, it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Hunger Games, like, not in a stealing it sort of way, but it gives me some of those vibes. But I thought it was really good. Okay. Last slide of honorable mentions. Okay, so a couple of these are controversial. Like they're not gonna well, actually all you know what? We're gonna call this the controversial slide that I will say I loved, but it's a caveat where this may or may not be your cup of tea. Like I can 100% understand why some readers would not get on well with any one of these three books, but they were very much up my alley. So, The Genesis of Misery by Neon Yang is Joan of Arc in space, and I think it is brilliant, and I loved it. However, I think the people who are going to do the best with this are people who not only love science fiction and space opera and sort of like a slow pace type thing, but also people who have a history like know a lot of church history, like Christian church history, because it is steeped in like religious stuff and mythology and symbolism, and it's got a lot of subtext to it. I loved it. Totally worked for me. I loved what it was doing. I think it's really smart, but it not everybody's gonna like it. I thought it was great. Both of the people I buddy read this book with didn't like it. So, there's that. Goliath by Toshion Yabuchi, also like loved. So, so smart. However, it is not easy to follow and get through because it is told in this kind of experimental nonlinear style where scenes are it's divided up by season. So you might have winter, and you'll have all these scenes that took place in winter, but in different places in different years with different characters. And it takes quite a ways into the book to figure out what the author is trying to do with it, but I just thought it was beautiful. It was amazing. I feel like this is like literary science fiction at its best, tackling issues of gentrification and race and climate change and a lot of things. It was so good. I want to reread this one at some point. I think it would make a great book club pick that you could really break apart. And then lastly, a half-built garden by Ruth Anna Emrys. I also loved they're comparing this to Ursula K. Le Guin, and honestly, I can see why the comparison because it's kind of a mix of a first contact story with climate fiction, but it's very, very character driven. It is this kind of slower paced, character-driven book following a queer polyamorous Jewish mom who meets these aliens and like their interactions with each other. And what I liked about it was the world building of the aliens focused instead of more on like their politics from like a war perspective, focus more on their culture, their parenting practices, their like family ties and stuff. I don't know. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. But again, any of these like if those are buzzwords for you, check them out, but they're not going to be everybody's cup of tea. Case in point, Renee says, I've read these three and I liked one of them. Yeah, I mean, like, this does not shock me. I'm not surprised that these are controversial, but I loved them. I thought they were great. Small channel, I just finished Half Built Garden a few days ago and did not really like it. Yeah, like again, I think a lot of people feel that way, but I loved it. Yes, aliens who bring their kids to everything. I thought that was so interesting. I loved the strong themes of motherhood and parenting. It really, really worked for me, but it's not going to be for everyone, which is fine. All right. With that said, let's go ahead and move on to my top 24 favorite books. And again, these are the things that I really love, which is is not going to be everybody's thing. Not my cup of tea. I DNF Sea of Tranquility though too. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, so I think actually this is a very good point. Sea of Tranquility and something like A Half-Built Garden have a lot in common in terms of being these like slow literary sort of sci-fi books, which is I completely understand, Heather. It makes sense that this would not be your thing, which is okay. It's take your kid to work day every day for them. It is. It's true. That's so funny. All right, top 24. Here we go. They're in order, but again, like this order is somewhat just they're vaguely in order. I'll put it that way. All right. Number 24. A Scoundrel of Her Own by Stacy Reid was number 24. Really loved this. It's a historical romance and it's, got class differences and a heroine from upper class, hero from lower class. They met as children and then he kind of spent his life trying to prove himself worthy of her, but it gets a little more complicated than that. I really enjoyed this one. I think Stacy Reid is fantastic. I enjoy all of her historical romances. They're fun, they're slow burn, and they've got like social issues that they're addressing. I think she's great. Let me take a look at comments. Themes are different though. I liked Sea of Tranquility. Yeah, I this is true. The themes are different in Sea of Tranquility versus Half Built Garden. I just liked both of them, but I got it. I definitely need more actual lasers in my sci-fi. Yeah, this like based on what I know of your taste, Heather, this doesn't surprise me. Like those are neither of those are books that I would like go out of my way to recommend to you. So I'm not shocked. Yes, the cover is very lush. She's kind of the king of the underworld. This was great. Stacey Reid's awesome. So this was among my favorite romances that I read. Number 23 was hashtag Church 2, How Purity Culture Upholds Abuse and How to Find Healing by Emily Joy Allison. I thought that this was fantastic. And I've, been in this process personally of unpacking and deconstructing from having grown up in evangelical Christianity. And a couple of the books on this list, actually, you're going to see, I think, have been a part of that. And I've made some videos talking about this earlier in the year. But I thought that this book was fantastic. I think it does a really good job of tackling the problems with purity culture and also offering some really practical suggestions for people who are trying to find healing from it. And it is from the written by the woman who started the hashtag church to the church to hashtag during early on in the Me Too movement of like people who faced abuse in the church. So I think it's really, really good. She's also a queer woman, and so I like that it talks a little bit about um, what it's like to be a woman who figures out later in life that you're queer after growing up in evangelical Christianity. Like I can relate. That's good. So definitely a fan of this one and would recommend. Definitely, I think that this is a better choice over some other things that have been published that are not quite doing what they say they're trying to do. Heather, I love a Stacey Reid historical romance, though. Can't go wrong with a pretty dress on the cover either. Yeah, I hear you. All right. Number 22 is another nonfiction that I just couldn't not have on my favorites list. Black Reconstruction in America, 1860 to 1880 by W.E.B. Du Bois. Whew, man, this was, this thing is a beast. It is 700 some pages long. I read it towards the end of the year. I did a project where I was trying to get through some of the books on my challenge TBRs for the year. And I I mean, I think this is amazing. It is tracing I mean, exactly what it says, the history of the Reconstruction era post-Civil War and the way that it impacted Black people throughout the South and state by state. And there's just so much history here. And yeah, I don't know. I just think that this is it's really amazing and well worth reading. It is one that is dense. You take your time with it, like read kind of a chapter at a time, treat them as these like essays. But there's a group on Instagram who is doing a read through throughout the year for this and doing discussions, which I think would be a great way in community to read this book actually, because there's so much to talk about. But Du Bois is really brilliant and a historian and cites a lot of sources. And I learned so much from reading this book. I really think this is something that should be assigned reading in school. So let me look at some of this. Renee is working her way through this one. Yes, I love it. It does look a bit like a textbook. This was put out by a small press, and it was published in like 1935. So it is older, and it is a text. I mean, it is kind of a textbook, honestly. That's really what it was to a certain extent written as. It's in conversation with some of the other academic works of the time, but I really think it's well worth the effort. I just think it would be a good one to read with other people and take your time with it. Yeah, I don't think it would be a bad thing to take 3 months to finish it, honestly. I think that's okay. Should see how far into it the Insta group is. Yeah, take a look. They're probably not that far yet. Um, just won't be assigned to Florida schools. Oof. Yeah, unfortunately, that is currently the case. But yeah, you learn a lot, and it is interesting to see some of the through lines of how the stuff that he talks about that happened in the late 1800s and that was happening in the 30s when this came out is still impacting American politics today. So, yeah, it is pretty wild. I agree with this, Renee. Du Bois' prose elevates it above a textbook. I agree. It's not that dry. And he actually, like, you kind of have to get into the flow of the language he's using. But once you do, like, there's some zingers. like, he's got this kind of dry sense of humor pushing back on people that he thinks are absurd. And so it can be entertaining at times. Like you do it, there are parts of it that are drier than others, but I would agree with this. I do think it's elevated above like an actual textbook. Yes, indeed. Freaking Florida. Oh God. All right. Number 21. This is actually the only book on this list that is not out yet. It's coming out in March, so it will be out soon. I had a really early copy of it and needed something happy and cozy, and I love Kay O'Neill's previous work, so I picked it up and also loved this. So The Moth Keeper is a middle grade graphic novel that is just really, really lovely, and I would recommend. Kay O'Neill wrote the Tea Dragon Society, so if you're familiar with their work, it's really, really lovely. This is about a young girl who is the like apprentice moth keeper for her community, and she's taken over this job, but it's a really kind of lonely job. And this is a book that is written in a way that's understandable for middle grade audience about burnout and about the need for community and taking care of your mental health. And it's really beautiful and it made me cry. And I love the artwork. So I would recommend checking this out. It's coming out in March. It'll be out really soon. It was excellent. So um just the book cover looks textbooky. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that this is partly just because it's from a small press and, it's not the best cover, but yeah. Definitely not in Florida. I think DeSantis is trying to single-handedly bring back book burning parties. Oh god. Ah, Tara wants to read this. Yeah, it's really cute. Adorable book cover. It is an adorable cover. Yay! Yeah, I love the Dragon Society series as well, so go check this out. I loved it. Number 20 is A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. This is a Harper Collins title. I don't know if we've had any other ones yet. I think this might be the first. I really love this. This was a book that we had for Patreon book club, and it is a horror novel. But again, like horror, I feel like is one of those things that's really hit and miss for people, whether it works for you or it doesn't. But I really enjoy what I've read of Paul Tremblay, and this worked for me. It is told from the perspective of like a 6-year-old. I think she's like 6, like a 6-year-old girl mostly. I mean, it's like a young woman remembering when she was 6, when her teen sister was dealing with something that was, maybe possession, maybe mental health stuff, but her parents decide to put their entire family on a reality TV show where they'll try to exorcise her and treat it as a possession. And, it's I mean, it's pretty horrifying, honestly, but I really liked it. It's partly commentary, I think, on, like, reality television and, like, this thing of, like, raising children in that sort of a scenario, but also pushing back on the problems of treating mental health stuff as if it's a spiritual thing and the trauma that that creates. I think Paula Tremblay does like to do open-ended endings, so the ending is left where it's sort of like you decide, like, do you think it was in fact a possession, or was it just like mental health stuff? And like he doesn't really make it super clear, but it's clear that that's some of what's getting pushed back on. And I really like this. It is intense. Like this is definitely horror, and there are some pretty gruesome scenes in it. But yeah, it was great. Yeah, as a book club pick, I thought this was really interesting as well. I know not everybody liked it, but I think we had a really interesting conversation. Is it more like realistic horror? Yeah, to a certain point. I don't know. I feel like that's a hard question to answer specifically, but kind of, yeah. Want to try Paul Tremblay since I've heard good things, but don't know where to start. Well, I mean, I think A Head Full of Ghosts is really good, but also they just did a film adaptation of another book from him that I really love, The Cabin at the End of the World. Knock at the Cabin, I think, is the movie title. So one possibility is you could see the film or read the book. That could be something. Um, but I liked that. Religion and horror is definitely a thing. Yeah, I thought the way that this it handled it was very interesting. Really want to read it now. Awesome. It really had you guessing, was it or wasn't it? Yes, it did, Tara, which I liked. Yeah. Some people don't like endings like that, but I enjoy it. Number 19 is The Keeper's Six by Kate Elliott. This is a novella, or I guess novelette, like a short novel with portal fantasy, and it is about a badass middle-aged mom trying to do whatever she has to save her adult son. And I loved it. I am such a big fan of Kate Elliott. I was so excited. In January, I actually got to interview her, which was really exciting. So if you haven't seen that, not a ton of people have watched the interview, but I got to do an interview with her and it was really amazing. She is so smart. And we talked about this, and we also talked about her, the Conqueror Son, which I love as well. It's like her gender bent, Alexander the Great in space. But I this was so good. I love a badass mom in fantasy. I'm a huge fan of it. In this case, she's really a grandma because her son and his husband have little babies, and she's going to save him, and, I love the world. She does so much world building, and so some people don't love that, but I feel like when you read this, it's like it feels like you're getting a small story set within a much larger world where lots of things have happened and will happen, and you could read multiple novels set in this world. Because she packs just so much plot and character development and world building into just about 200 pages. And I do think that something like this is a great way to try out Kate Elliott because a lot of her novels are very long. And so if you've been intimidated by that and you want to get kind of a taste of what she does, I think something like The Keeper Six could be a great option. I was a fan. It was great. This came out in January. So this was one of my other 2023 releases that showed up on this list. Rose says, I really enjoyed A Head Full of Ghosts. I can see why it wouldn't be for everyone though. Yeah. Yes, same. Um, haven't seen this, but sounds cool. Badass mom trope. Yeah, I like a badass mom in fantasy. There's another book on this list that also has a badass mom in fantasy. I want to see more of it. I love it. I think it's great. Number 18 is Reprieve by James Hahn Matson. I loved this. However, the reviews are really mixed. And I think part of the problem, to be honest, is I really think this book was mismarketed. It is horror. However, it is literary horror and it is mostly social commentary and it is very slow paced and character driven. And so I think this was being marketed as more of a traditional horror novel with this like creepy full contact haunted house. And while yes, that is in this book, it's like not the majority of the book. And like there are chapters in this haunted house that are sort of set interspersed within the character focused chapters, but it's not the majority of it. And so I think that mismarketing is um part of why I think some people didn't like it that much, but I really, really loved this. I thought it did such a great job unpacking so many things in terms of like race and class and immigration status. Also, one thing I really like about this, so the author is a queer Asian man, and he, through an Asian character in the book, addresses anti-blackness in that community, which I think is cool that he's like talking about it. So there's just a lot of nuance to this. So if you're a big like give me horror with social commentary kind of person and you can do like character driven, highly recommend Reprieve. I think it is excellent. And I will say the scenes with the haunted house are super creepy. um, but yeah, I loved this. I thought it was great. Let's see. We should do a readathon to read all the Harper titles we've been avoiding for the last few months. Yeah, no kidding. This is also a Harper title, by the way, Harper Collins. Isn't this one about racism? Yes, this one does partly deal with racism, among other things. Yes. That's my favorite horror. Well, hey, Renee, Reprieve. It's a Harper title, so, you could pick it up. I thought it was great. I think it's unfortunate the Goodreads ratings are on the low side, but honestly, I think it's the marketing. I just think that, like, people thought they were getting something that it wasn't. I'm adding to your TBR again. You're welcome. I'm glad I can help. I was like, I'm not going back. Oh, that's great. All right. Number 17, Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl by Joya Goffney. This was so great. This is a YA contemporary novel, which is not usually my thing. I picked this up because of Ashley at Bookishram, and I'm so glad I did. It was so good. It made me cry, and I think really specifically spoke to a lot of my own personal experiences. I think I have like a TikTok talking about this book actually. Um, but this is about a girl who is a pastor's daughter, and she's been raised with, purity culture stuff, and she's got a boyfriend that she's been with, and for the last year they've been trying to have sex even though she's like knows she's not supposed to, but it physically hasn't worked. And one of the things that this talks about, she has like this really extreme version of it, but it talks about something that doesn't get talked about a lot. What is there's like an actual term for what she has, and it is escaping me. So maybe I'll look it up, or if somebody has it in the comments, that would be good. But she has this condition that I like doesn't get brought up very often. Let me find this because it's gonna bug me if I can't think of it. Confessions of an Alleged Good Girl. I know it's in my review on Goodreads. um, but basically, this is something that can happen sometimes because of things like purity culture, because it's mostly like a psychological thing. Um, Okay, vaginismus, that's what it's called. So, like I said this in my review, she suffers from a relatively severe form of vaginismus. It's a treatable condition involving the vaginal muscles spasming or tightening in a way that prevents penetration or causes painful penetration, a condition that is apparently more common in victims of sexual trauma, but also with people who grew up in religious traditions with intense purity teachings. And I love the way that this talks about it. So she, gets therapy and like kind of finds healing from it and stuff. Oh, thank you. Somebody said vaginismus. Yes, that was it. Um, but like as somebody who also grew up in this kind of thing, and I got a little personal, I guess, in my review of this, but early on when I first got married many, many years ago, had a less severe but similar thing and had no idea what the problem was. And it, like eventually it resolved. But this is something that nobody talks about. And yes, it can happen with trauma as well, but it can also be related to some of the stuff. So anyway, I loved this. I loved the way that it dealt with sex positivity and some of the issues. It was really, really good. Also, her boyfriend was a piece of work and she ends up having a romance with a much better guy, but it's not really just a romance. Anyway, highly recommend if you have any kind of background in that. But I think just in terms of valuable sexual education for teenagers that doesn't get talked about a lot, I think this is excellent. Um, would recommend. Yeah. Confession sounds good. I love Bookish Realm book recs and what she reads so far. She hasn't steered me wrong. Yeah. Um, yes, Ashley from Bookish Realm loved this. She's why I picked it up. And I'm glad that I did. It was great. I wish I had that book like much earlier in my life, but I'm glad it's here now. So yeah, a lot of people don't know about this condition. So I think it's really great that this author decided to write about it. Number 16. I loved this so much. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. Oh, thank you, autocorrect. It says Balder, but it's Baldry. Anyway, you can see it on the book title. It's fine. Um, Cozy fantasy is having a moment, and I love it. I know this is not everybody's cup of tea because it is very low on plot, but let me tell you, I was having a very high anxiety moment, and this was exactly what I needed. Like, is it high stakes? No. Is it just about them opening a fantasy coffee shop? Yes. And I was living for it. It was so wonderful. And I feel like this is something where people are either also love it or like, I don't get it. It was boring, which is fine. But I'm in the I love it so much camp and I want more. And I'm so excited that we're getting a prequel story as well with like a bookshop. I'm like, yeah, give me all the cozy fantasy. I love that it's having its moment in the sun. It was delightful. This is one that I originally had just given 5 stars to, and it just stuck with me all year long, and I was like, "No, this is, like, pretty high up on this list of favorites, it has to." So, I love this. Legends and Lattes, of course, if this wasn't in here, I'd think this Bethany was an imposter. Yeah, I really loved this book. I've been pushing it on people. Yes, I'm so glad people loved it. Renee, I know you didn't. It's okay. It's okay. Leanna hated it, but it's fine. She needs plot in her fantasy. I love Legends and Lattes so much, it was giving me all the TJ Klune fantasy romance vibes I've been missing since House on the Cerulean Sea. Yeah, that's fair. It's definitely like a very low key bit of a romance. I like dark and intense stories, but sometimes I'm exhausted and need something nice and low stakes. Yes. Yes. Sometimes that is what you need. It just like it made me happy. And I know some people think it's absurd, like, oh wow, amazing. You figured out you could put ice in coffee and have iced coffee. And I'm like, yes, they figured out how to make iced coffee and croissants. It's so cute. I don't know. I loved it. It was great. So if you like cozy and you don't need a lot of plot, do recommend. Number 15, A Taste of Golden Iron by Alexandra Rowland. Oh, y'all, I love this. It is super slow burn, like very, very slow burn, which again, not everybody's cup of tea. Oh, wait, 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 wait. Renee, no, the suspense of them inventing iced coffee for 150 pages was riveting. That's hilarious. Yes, exactly that. But A Taste of Gold and Iron is like super, super slow burn queer fantasy romance about a prince and his bodyguard, and I was living for it. Now, listen, do not go to this for the plot. The plot is like very okay. The plot mostly exists to serve the romance, the very, very slow burn romance. So if you need a lot of great plot and world building in your fantasy to like it, this is probably not going to be for you. But man, did I love it. There is so much angst and pining and longing, and also it deals quite a bit with mental health stuff. The prince has anxiety and like panic attacks and stuff. And for a book that could have potentially been questionable in terms of power dynamics, I think the author did a really great job creating relatively balanced power dynamics between the two of them, at least by the time the romance actually happens, because it takes a long time for anything to get there. But I loved it. There's like a hair washing scene. I was like, oh my God, I'm living for this. It was great. Um, but again, I think some people think it's too slow burn. Some people didn't like that there wasn't much of a plot. If those things will put you off, it may not be for you. I thought it was amazing. So, you know. Um, well, I usually like murdering or serial killery books. That's what I mean by dark and intense. Yeah, neither of these are that. Is this a series? Not that I know of, but if it was, I would certainly read on. It was fun. Want to read this? Do you love a bodyguard trope? Yeah, I thought it was really good. And he's the prince, but his sister is the ruler, so he's not in line for the throne, which I think is one of the things that helps with some of the power dynamics. It was great. I loved it. And the cover's beautiful. All right. Number 14 is Parable of the Talents by Octavia Butler. I think this is the third year in a row that an Octavia Butler novel has ended up on my favorites of the year list. I just love her. Or maybe this is the second year and 2023 is the third year. I'm not sure because there's already an Octavia Butler on my 2023 favorites list. She just doesn't miss for me. I think she had such a brilliant mind. I love her writing. I love the way that she is willing to make people uncomfortable in order to explore the themes she wants to explore. I think the way she does character work and world building is phenomenal. And I actually liked Parable of the Talents better than Parable of the Sower. It is quite different. Structurally, thematically, they're quite different. But this was really good. I will say, be prepared to read it because it feels all too real to a certain extent. The fact that this was written, I think this came out in like the early 90s, but it feels quite relevant to the world we are living in today. So do with that what you will, but it was amazing. What would I recommend as an entry point to Octavia Butler? Oh, that's a good question. Um, so I think it probably just depends. The first book that I read from her was Kindred, which is fantastic, but quite different from the other things that she's written because that one is kind of sci-fi, but it's more time travel of a Black woman from the 70s going back into the past to meet some of her enslaved ancestors. And it's rough. Like, it is very rough, but also really good. Um, so that's a place you could start. If you want something more dystopian, Parable of the Sower is certainly that. Dawn is like weird futuristic sci-fi. I don't know that that's like a good place to start with her. I guess this is my feeling. Um in some ways I think Kindred is in some ways I think Kindred or Parable of the Sower are better places to start because I feel like some people, depending on the readers, might need to build up trust in Octavia Butler before they get to some of her books with things that might make them more uncomfortable. Like Fledgling, for example, is her sort of vampire story, but it makes people really uncomfortable. Renee is saying start with Dawn. It's short and amazing. It is short and amazing. It's also weird though, and I just don't know. It depends on your tolerance for like kind of weird things and books that are dealing with lack of consent. So anyway, I don't know. All of her things are great. They're all different. Maybe once I read all her books, I will think more about this and, do a video talking about what I think. I'm working on getting through all her stuff. First heard about it from Hannah from A Clockwork Reader, and then You're Living It Too, so now it's also on my TBR. Yay. I wanna read all of Octavia Butler. This series is so good, and it's so close to what happened here in our world. Yeah. Yes. I could talk about that for a while. It's wild. The first in the series was the only Butler book I didn't like. Might have to give this a try. It does not follow the same main character. This mostly follows her daughter, and it is not written as letters. It is quite different. So if you didn't love the first one, I would still try this. Definitely. If you can try, I can try weird. You have to be cool with the sort of three-way. Yeah. Uh, yes, Fledgling Dawn also has sexual stuff in it. Yeah. Fledgling makes people uncomfortable because there's a sexual relationship between the sort of vampire woman who's actually like in her 70s, but she's in has the body of a child. Like she looks like a human pre-adolescent. Um and it deals a lot with like sex and consent. So yes, it is sexual, and Dawn also is. They're dealing a lot with like playing with questions of like gender and consent stuff. So heads up for that. But yeah, Dawn from Lilith Sprue is I mean, it's amazing. I love it. But yeah. Yeah, Heather, I think Dawn might be a good starting point for you. Actually, I could see that. I just want to like give people a heads up before they dive into some of this. Um, there is a lot of sexual non-con going down and yeah, yeah. So if that bothered you, I would not try Dawn. Um, because I think it's dealing with some similar themes. I think both are excellent, but if that bothers you, I wouldn't do that. I think this duology though might be something to try. It does have content warnings, but yeah. Yes, I think you have to be aware of the content going into her stuff for sure. All right. Number 13 is another this one's a cozy sci-fi. A Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. I just love this so much. It's also very cozy, very slice of life. I mean, there is some actual sort of climate fiction sci-fi stuff undergirding it, but really like a lot of this is just feels like a hug and a therapy session. Like the big concept here is that you don't have to work and produce to have value, which, some of us need to hear. I loved this. It was wonderful. So, Becky Chambers is always great. Definitely would recommend. Wish she was able to finish the series though. I'd love to see where she would have gone. Yeah. Yes, we love Becky Chambers. She's always so good. This made me happy. It was amazing. Even Renee loved this. So, cozy sci-fi for the win. Liked this one but didn't love it. Preferred the first one in the series. That's interesting. I actually liked this one better than the first one, but both are great, honestly. And your mileage may vary depending. It was so good. Oh yes, The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, also fantastic. I love Becky Chambers for cozy, diverse, character-driven sci-fi. It's wonderful. So, yeah, so good. Okay. Number 12 is The Blood Trials by Annie Davenport. I freaking loved this so much, and I made a whole video about it because I was frustrated with the cover and the marketing. Like, the cover is beautiful. However, when people look at this cover, they think it's YA or it's indie, and it's not really either one of those things. Like, she is somewhat on the young side, like I would say like college age, but this is much grittier than what you would expect from YA, and I just think like people are not getting the right vibes. To me, this is much more similar to something like Red Rising by Pierce Brown, except with magic and a black girl who is dealing with racism. um, but I feel like it's got a lot more in common with that, and she's trying to figure out who assassinated her grandfather. I thought this was an incredible debut novel, and I cannot wait for the second book in the duology, and I really, really want more people to read this because I think a lot of people would love it, and I think the marketing, unfortunately, has done it a disservice and not really gotten it into the hands of all the people who would be the proper audience for it. So, and it's really fast-paced, a lot happens. It is quite violent. I think, like, if you liked Red Rising, you would like this. If you didn't like Red Rising because of it's like kind of misogynistic and doesn't handle race super well, then read this because it does both of those things great. There's my pitch for this. Um, let's see. Yay, I love to hear this. Read the blood trials because of your wreck and loved it. Yes, that makes me so happy. I've had a few people tell me this, and I'm so glad that some people have done it. Check this one out from the library 3 times and still haven't gotten to it. Oh no. Yes, it really does look YA. The second book also looks YA, and it's not. Like it's very adult. It's frustrating. Can't wait to the next book in the series with how yeah, like this ending too. Oh my god. I kinda wanna do a reread before I read the next one, but y'all, yeah, it like, the ending is wild. With the YA pseudo Claire or Moss cover yeah, I know, I know. 100% not picked up blood trails because of the cover. I'm telling you, Robert, I like, the cover is really, really doing a disservice to this book because it is not at all giving the vibe of what the book is, and it's a shame because I think there's a lot of people who would love this who just haven't picked it up because of what it looks like. New adult, yeah. I mean, that is fair. Like, she's not, 30, she's, I don't know, early 20s, college age, but, it's not YA. The sequel is coming out fairly soon, actually, that is a great question. I think I have it pre-ordered, so let me just look at my pre-order spreadsheet. I can tell you because of course I do. Um, it is okay, it's not as soon as I want it to be, but it's coming out in April, April 18th, so I'm excited for it. If I read Legends and Lattes and love it, I'll let you know. Please do. That would be great. Yeah, so, the sequel comes out April 18th. This is another Harper Collins title, by the way, so another one of the reasons I waited to do this video until the strike was over. All right, and for more Harper Collins, Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. I loved this. I did a read along of the Live Ship Traders series. We had live shows for all of them, which was fun. So you can go back and find those if you're interested. I this series was amazing, and you're gonna see another one of the books in the series on this list. Two of them made it on my favorites list, and as a whole, I thought the series was phenomenal. The way Robin Hobb just does characterization and world building is amazing, but also she rips your heart out, and like her books get very dark, but I think she writes characters that feel very, very real, and she builds these worlds with questions and mysteries that I'm always curious to learn more about. I love her. Also, if you are wondering when I'm going to continue with reading series in this universe, it is going to be pretty soon. I'll let you in on some knowledge here because I haven't officially announced it, but I am planning a read along for the Tawny Man trilogy pretty soon, actually. When are we planning? Oh no, it's not soon. Why am I saying it soon? We're doing a different read along soon. In the fall. So September, October, November, I will be reading the Tawny Man series. So if you want to read along with me, or if you want to catch up before that, you can. These are amazing. I love them. Yes, Robin Hobb does multiple series in the same universe, and they're so good. All hail the queen, we're not worthy, 100%. 100%. She's amazing. Yeah, Joe Abercrombie also writes multiple series in the same world. Thought the series was fine and liked the first series better. I think people are split on this. I loved this series better than the first series, although it's also very good. But it depends how people feel. I think every person I've seen reading Robin Hobb has loved the Live Ship Trader series. Yeah, it's a good one. It's really good. Yes, and the ships are characters. Robin Hobb has my eternal trust. Yeah, she's so good. Yes, this book was amazing. I loved it. Incredible. Number 10, Jesus and John Wayne: How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation by Kristen Kobes Dumez. This is another nonfiction title. And another thing that I was reading for some of the like deconstruction projects I was working on, I actually have a whole video talking about mostly this book. And I, I can't recommend it enough. It is an excellent piece of nonfiction that traces the history of white evangelicalism in America from like relatively early 1900s through the Trump years. And um, yeah, it's wild, but it makes so much sense, and it's written by somebody who is still part of the Christian church, so I think it's an interesting perspective for her to have, but she talks a lot about toxic masculinity and patriarchy being drivers of a lot of things. Anyway, I love this. It was amazing. Definitely would recommend reading this one, and the audiobook is very good for this as well, if you have a hard time getting into nonfiction. Have trouble getting through the 3rd book of the 1st series. Yeah, yeah. Pacing on that book is a little rough. The audiobook is good. It helps. Really trying to read more nonfiction this year. Yeah, I think this is very good. Number 9, speaking of Joe Abercrombie, is The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie. Me and Leanna over on Chapter 3 podcast did a read along of all the first law books by Joe Abercrombie last year, which was really fun, and did like episodes for all of them. And it was really great. I'd been meaning to get to more of his books, and this pushed me to do it. And this was definitely my favorite of the bunch. It it was so good. I feel like, at least for me, this was kind of the perfect conclusion to what he was doing, and it felt very Abercrombie, and I loved the reveals and the characters, and, I can't say much about it because most things are spoilery. So if you want spoilery thoughts, go check out Chapter 3 podcast, and me and Leanna did a bunch of episodes on these, but, this was so good. That's all I can say, really. Looking forward to reading Joe Abercrombie's first law books, have the 1st and 3rd. Yay! They're really good, and I think his writing only improves, and he he has written some of my favorite characters. So, yeah. Number 8. This is another surprise, All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir. This book is amazing. It has gone on to win awards, including the National Book Award, and deservedly so. I had this as an e-arc, and I am not usually a YA contemporary girly, but I mostly requested this because I enjoyed the fantasy books from Sabatir, and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And wow, this was so good. It is really intense and it deals with a lot of difficult topics. So that is worth looking into and knowing before you go into it. But I, this, like, this book made me cry. It was beautifully written. It was amazing. It follows 2 Pakistani American teenagers um, dealing with a lot of stuff, dealing with family issues, dealing with trauma, dealing with neglect and abuse, and kind of their relationship with each other, and racism in the world around them, and poverty. So, like, it deals with a lot of really rough stuff. And I know some of it is drawing on her experiences as a growing up with her parents running a motel. One of the characters parents run a motel, but I loved this. I thought it was incredible. I'm so happy that it won awards. I read it before it came out and I was like, wow, shocker, a YA contemporary on my favorite books of the year list. And then unsurprisingly went on to win all these awards and deservedly so. I think it's amazing. So, yeah. Sometimes I think it's my language processing disorder with nonfiction, sometimes not all the time. Audiobooks help some. Yeah, it can be hard depending on the style. That makes sense. I really want to read All My Rage. A lot of people are loving this that you trust. Yeah, I mean, it will make you cry, but it hurts so good. Like, it's really beautiful and I think hopeful by the end too. Oh, yay, one of my favorites too. My sister thought it was too much of a downer, but I love the characters and story so much. I mean, it's not a happy book, although I think the ending is really hopeful. Um, it was just so well done. And again, this is not usually the kind of thing I pick up, but it ended up being a favorite. Number 7 is my other badass mom in fantasy, The Sword of Kaigen by ML Wang, and I loved this. Did I join the Kickstarter for the special hardcover edition of this? Yes, yes, I did. So, um, this one took me by surprise. This is another actually, now that I think about it, there's like a this is another book that I read for that vlog where I was like reading things that I picked up because of Angela at Literature Science Alliance. Um, I don't know why, but I had like an idea in my head of what this book was gonna be. And I was like, nah, I don't think it's gonna be for me. And then Angela's review of it is what made me think, okay, maybe I do want to pick this up. And I'm so glad that I did because it was amazing. I I think one thing not everybody always talks about is that it's a modern fantasy. So it is set on an island that is a little bit disconnected from the regular world, and they hold to some, like, older traditions that are sort of vaguely Japanese inspired, but it exists in the modern world. So, like, there's technology and things. But yeah, the character work in this was amazing. It is a slow burn, it is pretty character driven, but it's got, like, a badass mom and relationships that I just loved. It was so good. Amazing. And the fact that this is a self-published book, I'm so impressed. And I think we're supposed to be getting another book in this world later this year, which is exciting. So I definitely will be wanting to pick that up whenever that comes. Have heard amazing things for this one. Yeah, it's great. Love Sort of Kagan, so well done. Yeah, I thought this was really well done. Well written, good character work. It was great. It it will break your heart though. Like it is also very sad at times, but it's so good. Uh, love this. Either read it back in 2020 or 2021 for I think shelf space, and my friend Jessie from the Bookish Mom gifted it to me. Oh, that's so nice. I love it. Badass mom. Yep, you get a badass mom. All right, mm, we're getting there. Oh wow, I've been doing this for like an hour. Oh my gosh. All right, we're getting close. Number 6, another nonfiction. I had a lot of nonfiction hits this year. Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teachings of plants. This was so good. It's another one I picked up because of other people. Not something I probably would have gravitated towards. Nature writing is not usually my thing, but this is amazing. I read it like 1 or 2 chapters at a time, and I actually did a reading vlog for it where I sort of with like calming nature shots and like my meditations on the reading from the day, which was fun to put together. So if you're interested, that exists on my channel. But yeah, it was really meditative and beautiful and thought provoking. And she kind of mixes, as like a plant biologist herself by training, she mixes things about indigenous teachings and plant biology with stories and anecdotes. And it was beautiful. It was so good. I want to revisit this at some point, but I would recommend this to anybody, honestly. It's really good. Nature nonfiction is something I mean, even more so, if you love nature nonfiction already, definitely pick this up. But even if that's not usually your jam, I would give this a try. The audiobook is so soothing. Oh my goodness. The author reads the audiobook herself and she has the most calming, soothing voice. And it's so good. I see a known voices review on TikTok. Sounds interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a lot of people in the indigenous community really love it as well. So would recommend. Number 5 is my other Robin Hobb, The Mad Ship. This is book 2 in the Live Ship Trader series. It was my personal favorite, and we've already talked about it, so I'm not gonna get more into it, but I loved this one. Some of the twists, some of the character work in this, just oh, man. I mean, the whole trilogy is amazing, but I really, really loved the 2nd book in the series in particular, which I think is not everybody's feeling, but I thought this was great. Number 4 is Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. Oh, y'all, I I just love this so much. I've seen people more recently say they didn't like it, which is fine. Listen, so good. Um, this is a contemporary romance between a very prickly woman with family issues and trauma and a um, single mom who's I loved this. I know it has a lot of family drama. I know she's like a prickly heroine who's not super nice all the time, but I love that. I was living for their relationship and this was wonderful. So, yeah, it was great. Loved it. Okay, what do we have? Um Recently read Oniga Missing Seasons of an Ojibwe Year by Linda Lagarde Grover that was recommended to me by a bookseller at Birch Bark Books in Minneapolis. Also fascinating. Cool. That's awesome. Actually liked that one. Okay, cool. No, the 3rd book is not on the list. Like, it was still, like, 5 stars, but no. Like, only 2 of them made the favorites list. Because I had some issues with the ending, Renee. So I love the trilogy as a whole, but, like, no. I think everybody likes the 2nd book most in the trilogy. Okay, well, fair enough. Maybe it's not a controversial take. Got it. Oh, thank you. You love my video about breeding sweetgrass. That's so exciting. I know it wasn't like the most popular video to watch, so I love that there were some people who enjoyed it. That's exciting. Want to read this and this. I still need to read the 2nd book, Astrid, whatever, the sequel to Delilah Green. But yeah, I really love this. Phew, I was concerned, but it's in a good spot. Yeah, Matchup was also your favorite from the series. Yeah. Yes, Delilah Green was amazing. Loved the heavy topics involved, made me cry multiple times. Yes, I loved it too. I loved the heavy topics. I love a prickly heroine. I love the like single mom love interest. Oh, it was so good. It was great. Renee loved it too. Like Delilah more than Astrid's book. I haven't read it yet. I own it. I want to read it, but good to know. I will try to have reasonable expectations going in. Number 3 is my other favorite romance I read this year, A Caribbean Heiress in Paris by Adriana Herrera. I mean, I am a fan of Adriana Herrera, but genuinely, like, oh my God, this book is so good. It's like fun and well executed and sexy and like a great historical romance. It follows, it's set in like the late 1800s and it follows a Afro Caribbean heiress who is traveling to Paris for the World Exposition to showcase her rum, and she falls in love with a Scottish whiskey maker, and it's really, really wonderful. And one thing that I like about it is she kind of intentionally decided she didn't if her heroine was going to be with a white guy, she didn't want him to still need to learn how to be a good ally, and so he doesn't. He already kinda knows that from previous I won't say too much, but, like, other relationships in his life, and I this was so good. And I'm so excited for the sequel, which we're getting in May. That one is a sapphic relationship, so it follows, like, the 3 friends who are all traveling to Paris, and each book will be their own romance. This was so good. More people should read it. It's fabulous. Yes, have a Caribbean Heiress in Paris on my books to read soonish. Yay. I love it. I am also just loving the fact that we are finally starting to get more people of color in historical romances because I think for a long time publishers didn't think it would sell, they weren't doing it, but like we know from actual history that people of color have like they lived and they traveled places. And I think one thing that you'll find is often like Black and Latinx authors who are writing historicals do a ton of research, like a freaking load of research, probably more than some of their white counterparts, to be honest, because people are like, this isn't historically accurate. But like all of this is drawing on actual real history. And it's interesting to hear some of their stuff. Actually, I've had Adriana Herrera on chapter 3 podcast a couple times as well. And it's been interesting to hear her talk about that. So do you recommend uh bought this on one because of my rec, haven't read it yet though. Okay. It's really good. It's a lot of fun, and it's light. It's, like, not a traumatic historical. Number 2 is The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories by Ken Liu. This book made me cry, like, 5 times. I'm not a big crier in books. I vlogged this for my patrons, and oh my god, this is so good. Like, this collection of short stories is amazing and brilliant, and now I need to go read everything from Ken Liu because I'm just amazed that his mind put all of this together. Like, these books are so smart, but also really well observed in terms of the humanity of the characters, the themes he's exploring, but, like, also the way he thinks about, like, science and history and puts I just yeah, this book was amazing, amazing. I mean, truthfully truthfully, like, just purely in terms of, uh, well-writtenness, this is, I would say, the best book that I read this year. It's not in my number 1 spot because my number 1 spot is going to a book that I loved more than this, even though I loved this a lot, but I do think that this is probably the like, best piece of fiction that I read in the entire year, just in terms of execution. It was amazing. So, what yeah. Um, do I do a worst Oh, Renee, have you not seen my worst list? Yes, I have a worst list. 100%. Worst and most disappointing books, you should go look for it because yes, I did do one. Mhm. I also did a DNF video, so if you wanna see my, like, worst and my books I DNF'd, I have 2 videos for you, so, yeah. Loved this one. Need to read this book, an author, yes, so good. Yes, me too, I'm so looking forward to it. So, Grace of Kings got picked for Patron Book Club in April, and I'm so excited to read a full novel from Ken Liu. Yeah, I think that's gonna be fun. That's the first book in the Dandelion Dynasty series. Oh, yay! Reading A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole this month. That's a fun one. And the main guy is clueless about pretending to be a regular person. Accurate. It's really funny. Yes, it is an origami tiger on the cover, and there is a origami tiger in one of the stories in the Paper Menagerie that is, like, kinda magical. You missed it! Oh gosh, yes, no, go look for it. It exists. There is a worst of video and a DNF video, so enjoy. Um, been meaning to get to Grace of Kings for a while. Yeah, I'm excited to pick it up finally, especially after having loved Paper Menagerie so much. Okay, and some of you guys already probably know, my number 1 most favorite book is one that not everybody loves, but I don't care because I love it enough for everybody else. It is, Siren Queen by Nevo. Y'all, I freaking adore this book so much. Is it mostly vibes and themes? Yes. Do I care? No. I like I think at this point Nevo is now one of my favorite authors. I love the way she writes, and this is by far my favorite thing I've read from her. It is set in an alternate version of the golden age of Hollywood, and it is following a young Chinese American girl who wants to be an actress and, kind of her experiences. She's also a lesbian, and there's, like she has, like, multiple relationships through the book, so if you want, like, sapphic romance, there's a lot of that in here, and it's quite steamy. Um, but I love it, like, also, if you like unlikable women, like, women who are prickly and will do whatever to get what they want, she is your girl. I think it's amazing. This book is literalizing the predatory practices of people in Hollywood during this era towards young women and especially young women of color using vaguely fey mythology. So it's got a lot of like magical realism vibes. Um, and I loved it. I ate this up. So, yeah, this was my favorite thing that I read in the year. It was wonderful. It it is mostly vibes, 100% can confirm. Yeah, it's a lot of vibes. I just don't care. When you love a book, you love a book, yeah, and this was one that I really, really freaking loved. So, I will, at this point, read anything that Nuvo writes and, probably love it. Have only read the first 2 books in the Singing Hills cycle. Yeah, those are great too. I really like them, but this book was just, like, everything for me, at least. So, yeah, it's a great cover. It works for the thing. Have so much Nuvo on your TBR, but haven't read a single one. Well, you know, it's a new year. You have time. I love this. Listen to Siren Queen on a solo road trip, and it was the best experience ever. I love that. Oh, that's so great. This is one that I wish I could read again for the first time because I just had such a good experience with it. It was great. I agree with this, Renee. The Singing Hill cycles are a good place to start because they're very short and easy to get through. Even this is not that long as a novel, but yeah. So that is it. On to 2023. Those are all of my favorite things that I read um, in the year. Oh, hi, you're just joining. I'm sorry. Welcome. Now I remembered you had Siren Queen in your SFF challenge for the year. Oh, that's exciting. Yay. I hope more people read it. So, all of the books are linked down below, as always. If you're looking for any of them, I just really, really loved all of these books. It was a great reading year. There were a lot of fantastic things. And so far, 2023 is shaping up to also be a great year. You know, I have like my oh, geez, my two new favorites from January, and then I've also got new favorites from this month. Now I can clear off. Now that I've done this, I can clear off my favorites shelf for the new year, which is very exciting. And go find homes for all of these books. So I'm gonna do that. Wouldn't say Siren Queens as SFF. Well, it's fantasy. I mean, it's not sci-fi, but it's fantasy, so I think it counts. Definitely added to my library hold tonight. Yay! I'm so glad. So thank you so much to everybody for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed. Go check out all the books, and I've got some exciting things coming for you next week. So, number one, this is already up, but Friday night there's going to be a live show with myself, Mara from Books Like Whoa, Ashley from Bookish Realm, and Reads with Rachel, talking about authors and reader spaces and interactions between authors and reviewers. So, or in reviewer spaces, I should say. So, I think that should be a very interesting conversation. Tune in for that. It'll be 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday. And then midweek, there will be an announcement officially coming because, as it has been highly requested, I am in fact bringing back Tour.comathon in March. So stay tuned for all the details on that. It's going to be fun. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful night. I will see you later. Bye.